This LOS is describe the steps in the portfolio management process. Steps in the portfolio management process. There's three main steps in the portfolio management process. Number one, the planning step. Number two, the execution step. And number three, the feedback step. Within each step, there are some sub-steps. So let's look at the planning step first. The first step under the planning step is understanding the client's needs. That's where we determine the objectives and constraints. After that is the preparation of an investment policy statement. Under the execution step, the first step is asset allocation, followed by security analysis, and finally the portfolio construction. In the feedback step, we monitor the portfolio and we rebalance it, and it's also followed by performance measurement and reporting back to the investment client. So a quick little question to check our understanding. With respect to the portfolio management process, asset allocation decisions are made in the A, planning step, B, feedback step, or C, execution step. Well, that was a pretty easy question. The correct answer is C. Asset allocation decisions are made in the execution step. Just going to spend a moment here to see how some of the LOS are tied together from reading to reading and linked. So if we look at the planning step, the first step was understanding the client's needs, which is determining the objectives and constraints. So if we move forward to the basics of portfolio planning and construction reading, we see there's an LOS there, which is describe risk and return objectives and how they may be developed for a client. So as you can see, this is very much tied to the planning step and understanding the client's needs. Now in the CFA, in previous readings, they used to have 4 return objectives that were quite explicit. They're not there in such detail anymore, but I still think it's useful to think of return objectives with regards to these 4. So the first one was capital preservation, earning a return at least equal to the inflation rate. The second is current income, earning a return to generate income, normally to pay living expenses or some other planned spending need. The third return objective is total return, meeting a future need through both capital appreciation and current income. And finally, the last return objective was capital appreciation, which was earning a return that exceeds the rate of inflation, which was the most risky objective. Again, looking forward a little bit in terms of the risk objectives are specifications for portfolio risk that reflect the risk tolerance of the client. Quantitative risk objectives can be absolute or relative, or a combination of the two. So with regards to risk objectives, we look at, with regards to a client, we look at not only the willingness to take a risk, but also the ability. So what is willingness to take risk? That's an attitude. The ability to take risk is based on your income, your job, your family situation, your age, etc. So there's this little matrix that if your willingness to take risk is below average and your ability to take risk is below average, then indeed you have a lower risk tolerance. However, if your willingness to take risk is above average, but your ability is below average, then there's some education or resolution required. Again, if your willingness to take risk is above average, and your ability is above average, then indeed you do have a higher risk tolerance. However, if your ability to take risk is high, above average, but your willingness is below average, then perhaps again there's some education or resolution required. Again, carrying on with regards to the planning step and establishing the client's needs, objectives, and constraints, the constraints comes up again in the basics of portfolio planning and construction under the LOS describe the investment constraints of liquidity, time horizon, tax, legal, and regulatory factors and unique circumstances and their implications for the choice of portfolio assets. So with regards to the constraints, it's very specific for the CFA, and the mnemonic LLTTU has been used for years and years. So again, the constraints are liquidity, legal and regulatory, time horizon, tax, and unique needs and preferences. Very specific to the CFA with regards to constraints, LLTTU. Finally, we're going to end this LOS with just a quick little practice question. Which of the following is least likely a part of the execution step of the portfolio management process? A, security analysis, B, portfolio construction, or C, performance management? Okay, as you can see, this question was the least likely. I put that in bold and red. We need to be careful with the negatives. Sometimes we can go too quickly. So the correct answer was C. Performance measurement is part of the feedback step of the portfolio management process. The execution step includes asset allocation, security analysis, and portfolio construction. And that's the last slide for this LOS. Thank you.